Obviously, Paul Frame has been the most visible elected official in Norfolk for 2 decades.
Yes.
So you're running to replace him, so why now and why you?
Well, you know, Les, over the last few years, you know, just kind of, you know, seeing things in the news, going around town, and I'm in every neighborhood. We have senior programs, youth programs, we're in every neighborhood, and just seeing how there was such a huge disconnect between downtown Norfolk and the rest of the city. And it's really been that way, perception-wise, for decades. And so, you know, I had some encouragement, even from some folks who've supported Paul for a number of years, and you know, nothing against Paul, and I have all the utmost respect for him, but you know, just to have a civil, serious conversation on priorities, where we're going forward. I mean, downtown has got to thrive, and I've always looked at downtown as being the beacon of Hampton Roads, the downtown of Hampton Roads. But a lot of things have languished. You know, I saw Waterside vacant, you know, for 5 years. Military Circle, that used to bring in more revenue to downtown. That seemed to kind of not get the attention it needed, and it's a heck of a business corridor. You know, when you look at the north end of the city, I think the last name brand hotel was the one I worked at when I was 12 years old as a busboy, and that was a Holiday Inn in Willoughby. And so, you know, the city's done a fantastic job of investing in East Beach, in Pinewell, the Ocean View Park. And so I think, you know, given some incentives to get more business down on that end of town, maybe bring in a hotel, you know, bring in some good restaurants. You're looking at the military highway corridor. You know, you look at, you know, people talk about Little Creek Road. I've heard it for 20 years that, you know, it's probably the ugliest road, you know, for a major road. And I think that, you know, and I look at our schools, and I'll never forget, I was a young policeman. And Joan Gifford, who was a realtor back in the day, and she was employing the Civic League at, I think it was Bayview, to please do something about our schools. Please talk to our city council, because we can't sell houses to the military because they get the orders, and before they get here, they're told if you have school-age kids, you probably don't want to live in Norfolk. And so it was really hurting, you know, the market. So that was 34 years ago. And you know, and they're hearing that again today. And so, you know, I'm more of a person that likes to kind of get things done and cut through bureaucracy and so forth. And so, looking at those big things and looking at public safety issues, I just thought that maybe I could bring some good dialogue to the conversation for change.
But Norfolk voters are fortunate in that they have 3 people who are running who do have a record of
Yes.
public service. Clearly, you're all 3 qualified to run for this office. So what sets you apart? Why should voters choose you over those 2?
Well, you know, I'm the only one that's run actually a government agency. You know, I have almost 500 employees. I actually not only vote on a budget, but I handle a budget, I administer a budget. And I'm familiar with every neighborhood in the city. And, you know, and whether you live in Berkeley, Compostela, Norview, Larchmont, Ocean View, Ingleside, everybody wants the same thing. They want good schools. They want to feel safe in their neighborhoods. And the business community wants to be able to either open a business or expand a business without a whole bunch of red tape. I've heard for decades that Norfolk's one of the most difficult cities to deal with when it comes to licenses and so forth. And so I think I'm more on the ground than Andy and Kenny. And plus, I'd be the only one that would be a full-time mayor. I would keep a full-time schedule, but I wouldn't be at City Hall. I would be out in the community, engaging with the business community and engaging with the neighborhoods. And I think that's something I think the citizens are looking for. They're looking for that open communication, transparency, and having a mayor that's actually out in the community, that is accessible pretty much on a daily basis.
Let's talk about a couple of specific issues. We're reporting today, unfortunately, on another child, a 12-year-old who was shot last night. You're aware that crime is an issue
Yes.
for a lot of people in Norfolk. First of all, do you support Chief Goldsmith? And secondly, can you name, you have a law enforcement background, can you name 2 or 3 things that you think you would like to do differently?
Yeah, and I do support Chief Goldsmith. Mike's come up through the ranks, but it's like any other position unless you have the resources. And you know, Andy, I just saw him on TV yesterday. They were asking him, you know, what would you do differently? And the quote was, I would do the same as I'm doing now. I'd ask the chief what he needs. And unfortunately, the chief is a city employee, an at-will employee, works for the city manager, who's an at-will employee to the city council. And if anybody on city council really thinks that folks are allowed to come and speak honestly and without fear of, being called on the carpet. We need more police officers on the street. Right now we have 100 positions that, between military leave, sick leave, officers on admin leave, on vacancies, the police department's averaging 6 to 8 a month. There's almost 100 police positions for the street, which is almost a whole precinct. Now, I don't know if you remember, 8 years ago, Old Dominion called me in to hire sheriff's deputies to work at Old Dominion because of the violence. And they just felt like they needed the extra presence over there, and the police department wasn't able to respond. And so they've done that twice. So that tells me that there's some, of course I have a good relationship with the police department and the city, and so my pulse is on, on that.
So it's primarily a police issue to solve, or are there other things that other city departments can do?
It's a police issue to resolve as far as police resources. I think if Chief Goldsmith had the resources, for instance, they used to have 8-10 gang investigators for the Norfolk Public Schools. They have 3. Norfolk used to have a 80 to 90% clearance rate on homicides. Now it's about 50%. There's a lot of inexperience on the police department because a lot of policemen are leaving. They had 83 policemen leave last year. Now, the only candidate who doesn't think that there's a problem, because that's what he's being told, is Andy. And, and we can have a difference of opinion on that, that's fine, but, I've been doing this, I've been in the business for 30 years. I teach it at Old Dominion as well. And, when we have a problem at Old Dominion, we pull people from Ocean View. When we have problem in Ocean View, we pull police officers from other areas. And so, we shouldn't have to be doing that. And the chief should be able to have the resources to just be able to respond. We need to go back to the old community policing model that started when I was a policeman, and none of us liked it. We didn't want to go out there and play kickball and get Slurpees and stuff like that. But the way everybody became a believer because it was that connection with the community. But to do that, you have to have the resources to have policemen doing that, and also policemen who are able to respond to things.
You mentioned schools. City Council doesn't run the schools, but you do have the power of the purse. So you mentioned a realtor 34 years ago, and the situation being very similar today.
Yes.
Can you name a couple of things that you think the schools ought to be doing differently?
And the biggest thing we can do for the schools is to let them know what our expectations are as the ones who control the purse strings. It's a third of the city budget, $315 million. The only time until just recently that the city council and the school board got together was during budget time. And then they find out what their needs are. The last year or two, they've met a couple of times during the year. I think we have to have ongoing conversation with them and let them know what we expect. Because they run the schools, but we're all affected. Economic development, businesses, crime, you name it. Property values are all affected by our schools. The one thing that I would insist on is we have to make sure that the teachers are not leaving our schools in Norfolk, and we have some great teachers, because they don't feel safe, and that's the #1 reason. Pay is second. They don't feel safe in the classrooms. So we need to get a handle on that. We need to encourage them to find out what we need to do to help them in that manner.
What does that mean, school resource officers, or how does that work?
Well, whether it's school resource officers or, there's a fine line between reporting kids to the police, to the youth bureau, to get them into the court services program, because you don't want to label them. But also, if you let them get away with things, we have teachers who are getting assaulted, and they're encouraged to handle it administratively. And if you're a teacher and these are kids, but some of these kids are taller than you and me and bigger than us, and they get into a teacher's face, it's kind of hard to expect teachers to be able to kind of have to teach and be able to control a situation like that.
Crime in schools are a couple of things that affect a city's reputation, any city's reputation. What would you personally do to improve Norfolk's reputation in those areas so you can attract more people and more businesses, either regionally or now we're in a global economy?
A lot of it is communication and letting folks know what expectations are. That's one of the things I've heard for years and years is there's not a lot of dialogue with the city council. Boards and commissions. don't have a whole lot of dialogue with the city council. You know, as a full-time mayor, I'm gonna be visiting schools. I'm gonna be. I'd like to start do some live chats, and every week do one in a different part of the city. And see, then you don't have the need for, do town hall meetings to find out what the citizens, either what's on their mind or what you want to get them. But, really the mayor can be a cheerleader for what's going good, because that's one of the things I've been talking about for the last 10 months. We have a lot of good things in our city. We have a lot of good things happening in our schools, but we don't get the word out on it. So we only hear the bad stuff, which is on the news. But, we need to be more proactive in getting the message out on what the good things are that are happening. We have a unbelievable downtown. We have unbelievable young folks, and I've been saying for years, why don't we invest in the high-speed broadband internet? And attract companies to come in and do some more things down at Town Point Park. To draw people down there. I brought up the free parking. Why don't we just try a pilot program? Let's get more people to come down into Norfolk, be more welcoming, and I think that's the main focus. I've been talking about issues that affect people's everyday lives: code enforcement and safety in the neighborhoods and safety in schools. It's not the sexy stuff, and I'm not talking about all these figures on this many or that many, and what I'd like to do. My goal and my vision is I want people to come to Norfolk because of our schools. I want people to come to Norfolk because it's a friendly business climate. I want people to live and work here and really be proud of Norfolk. And we have a lot of people that are proud of it, but there's a whole lot of other people that are like going, gosh, can't we do better?
You mentioned the pilot program. Just to be clear on that, would that be after a certain time of night, and would it be only downtown? That
would be in the parking garages downtown. And you have over 100 locations that people could park at a garage and go to, and it would be after 6, 7 o'clock at night on the weeknights and on the weekends, or a combination of both. But it would be a good draw. Roanoke's doing it, Crystal City, Virginia's doing it, Boulder's doing it, Knoxville's doing it, and it's very successful. And so, the whole idea is to try and bring more people downtown. I think more people will come down and eat in our restaurants. I think the businesses and the restaurants, the mall will flourish. I think we'll have more of them opening up. And then I think more people are going to realize what's really happened down in Norfolk. And we're going to get some of these young folks that are come down, and they're going to be paying the $1,800, $2,200 rents on these condos that we're building downtown.
You mentioned the perception of downtown versus the rest of the city, and there is that perception that a lot of resources, a lot of money, a lot of attention has been paid to downtown, maybe at the expense of some other parts of the city. I assume you agree with that. If so, what would you do to change it?
Well, that's one of my motives for running, is to be that person who can connect, because the mantra's always been, we have to have a thriving downtown to create the tax base so we can pay for these services around the city.
Has that worked?
The problem is the people on the east side and the south side and north side, they don't see all those services coming their way. They don't see the incentives for businesses to open up over in Military Highway Corridor, over on Little Creek Road, Southern Shopping Center Corridor. And so I think being familiar with all of the neighborhoods, I'm the only one, last thing, I can go into any neighborhood in Norfolk. I've been sheriff 22 years, and we're so active in the communities and so active in the schools already. We work with the businesses that I'm known in every community. And so I'm a pretty good communicator. You can probably tell that. And so that's what I want to do. I want to be that bridge between our neighborhoods and our businesses with a city government that a lot of citizens, not just Norfolk but other places, they don't trust their elected officials, and I want to try and change that.
Let me ask you about light rail. Virginia Beach gets all the attention about light rail,
yeah.
But Norfolk actually has light rail and has some experience with it. What should city taxpayers in Norfolk be willing to do to pay to extend it, maybe to the naval base or to the airport? How much light rail is the right amount for Norfolk?
It's a great question, because when light rail came here, it was supposed to be a starter line. And what I'm really confident about is I think regionalism is going to become much more common, because I think the governor's getting, we have a regional jail in Portsmouth that there was incentives to build it and have 4 cities in it. Now we have 5. I think with what the governor's doing with this Go Virginia is give incentives, like he's dangling, quite a bit of money to Virginia Beach, and that would be an incentive to do things together. And I think as personalities are changed on some of the city councils in Hampton Roads, and maybe some of the older guard who's kind of built up certain attitudes or convictions about the other cities. I think once we start working on those relationships and building trust, I think that I feel good about going to Virginia Beach. I feel good about going to the naval base, going to the airport, going to Old Dominion. I think once we're able to get that regional cooperation, I think it's going to start happening rather quickly.
But it's a regional solution, not just the city of Norfolk.
Well, because the city of Norfolk can't do it alone, but I'll tell you what, if the money's available and Virginia Beach doesn't want to take advantage of it, then I think that we need to look at doing that, and at least getting it to the naval base. And then I think there's going to be so much pressure from Chesapeake and Virginia Beach to say, okay, because unfortunately when Norfolk built it, it left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. $100 million over budget. Left a lot of bad taste in people's mouths, and I don't think they've forgotten that from the other cities yet.
What should the city's approach be toward encroachment around Naval Station Norfolk? Virginia Beach has obviously been very aggressive around Oceana, Chesapeake around Fentress in buying up properties. Should the city of Norfolk take a similar approach around Naval Station Norfolk?
We should, or we're going to lose major assets. And we were here, and a lot of people were here when Oceana kind of just kept doing their own thing, and look what happened. If it wasn't for Jacksonville voting, they didn't want it, we would have lost most of Oceana. And with Norfolk, I was kind of dumbfounded that they voted the way they did a couple of years ago, or a couple of months ago, because the commanding officer of the Naval Base came down and said, look, we had an agreement that they signed, another kind of like more than a handshake in 2013, just a couple of years ago, to say, okay, we won't do any more encroachment, and they violate that. And that's why I'm talking about building trust and relationships. We're going to need to. We have to have the military. It's the biggest employer. I mean, I can't even imagine Norfolk without the naval station. But I think the Navy has spoken, and they've said, okay, we're not happy with it. We're still friends, but when the decision comes down the road, and it's going to, sequestration opened everybody's eyes. I don't see how we can vote against the Navy when we rely on them so much, and they don't ask that much of us. But we lost, gosh, we had to displace hundreds and hundreds of kids playing Little League ball over on Hampton Boulevard at Fleet Park, and we did that. And so I think as we go along, I think we're going to have to do what Virginia Beach is doing, but also get assistance from the state, because they've gotten assistance from the state to be able to have funds to do that. But we have to do it.
You mentioned people being displaced, and that happens sometimes to low-income residents. I mean, Norfolk, there's a finite amount of land. You got to put property on the tax rolls to keep the city going. What are you prepared to do to make sure there is affordable housing for low-income people in Norfolk? Well,
we do have affordable housing in Norfolk, but there's a lot of places people don't want to live because of crime. I'll give you, for instance, that drives citizens crazy that I've heard over the years. The St. Paul Squadron is something that the city spent $440,000 on a study. And it was a very comprehensive study. It had a lot of buy-in from the community, all the stakeholders from around businesses, residents, and so forth. And they went against the plan. They voted against the plan, within a year. And it was mixed income. It was low-income housing with mixed income with retail. And then they put the HRT, and they plopped the HRT, bus station, right in there. And they've now voted to have S.L. Nussbaum do a project. And I've met twice with the group that was, part of that task force. And, they're very disappointed. And so those are the things, we have a lot of studies, and we do a lot of studies. But if we're going to pay for them and we're going to bring all these experts in, I think we kind of need to maybe pay attention to them a little bit more. And I know that there's, one of the other candidates goes, we're not bound by it. We're not bound by it, but if we're going to pay for these experts to come in and we have the community buy-in, I think we need to kind of, go with our gut feel and do the right thing and not what the politically expedient thing is.
Sea level rise is an issue that gets a lot of attention. I was over here when the HUD secretary and the governor came to town, and Norfolk's getting a lot of money to deal with that. Is there a role for the city in this as well? I know right outside our building here, we get 2 inches of rain and street floods.
Yes.
What's the city's role in an issue like that, where you have a lot of neighborhoods that experience flooding every time you get just a normal rain?
Well, I'll tell you, that's one area that Norfolk is head and shoulders above almost everybody else in the country. Norfolk hired one of the first resiliency officers, and like a lot of people did who are a lot smarter than me, they Googled what a resiliency officer was, and I think a lot of people in the news did too, I was told. But you know what, ODU took a lead, got a $120 million HUD grant. We've got a comprehensive plan that's already been laid down. We had the Dutch dialogues last year looking at what they're doing over in Europe. I think that over the course of the next 50 years, everything I've read, I think it's going to be tough to prevent sea level rising, and we can't just pack up and go because we're a port city. All of us are really relying on the water, but it's how we're able to be resilient after floods happen and so forth. And I think with the comprehensive plan that we have, the two biggest areas are Ghent by the Hague and down in Ocean View, Pretty Lake. But you're right, if you go down to Monticello Avenue, if you go out here outside your Channel 3 station, there's a lot of places. And I think there's a comprehensive plan, and what I want to see is, I want to see us, because next to New Orleans, we're the second most vulnerable city in the country. We can actually make this an economic development issue, and I've talked about this for 10 months. We have the universities here, we have the military here, we have EVMS here, and we can actually be the hub of research for sea level rising. We're already on the Rockefeller Foundation's radar. We're on the HUD, we're on the White House's radar, and so Norfolk can bring people in from all over the country and the world to be able to study this, because it's an issue. And we're not the only ones, but we're one of the most prominent ones. And so I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens over the next several years in that, because I really think that Norfolk is, that's probably one of the best things Norfolk has done to get out in front of the 8 ball in a long time.
This is the final question. Campaigns are not easy things to do. They require a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of time spent away from family and friends and what you would normally do. As you get near the end of this process, what do you think you have learned, either about yourself or about how to do it, or tell me what you've learned? I don't always say the politically correct things, but here I go. We all have our opinions, and I've been running, the sheriff's office for 22 years. I was a police officer before that, but we all have our opinions on everything. It's kind of like, just around the water cooler. But getting in the campaign and having to really get in and do research and really do some reading, you really learn about the sea level rise, and not just talk about, oh, we got to do this, but really be able to make informed decisions on what you're doing. Because I've always said I'm not afraid to surround myself with people that know more than me. And that's really what we need to do on a lot of different issues. I'm not afraid to admit that. But learning that, and even, like no-kill animal shelters, may seem like a minor thing when you compare, to schools and public safety and the sea level, but those people are passionate. And so you really have to make sure you give everybody the attention that they deserve, because they are citizens. They pay our salaries, and sometimes people in public office forget that, but we're paid by the taxpayers. And so whatever the issue is, but learning all the different things that go on in the city and all the different pressing issues and agendas has been a learning experience and rewarding as well. Good luck on Election Day.
Thank you, Les.
Bob McCabe, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you.